Good afternoon, dear students. Today we begin with our course, our first chapter of the book, The Individual and Society, DSC 1 Literature 1. Now, since we have already had too many discussions about it, I've already shared two video tutorials with you as far as your course structure is concerned and your syllabus is concerned. So let's move further. Now, before we begin with the story, I would give you a little idea as to what literature is, who is the father of nation. There are certain genres in literature, what they are. So first let us know the basics of literature and then move on to our first chapter, our first story. So we often say that literature is the mirror of society. Mirror of society? Mirror क्या करता है? Mirror reflect करता है. So what does literature do? It presents or it reflects an image of the society, what people think, what they do, what experience they have had, and what all they have seen in their life is what forms the part of literature. Now, what kind of literature people write? It has been theoretically divided into, or it is called genres. Okay, this is genres of literature, and there are 4 genres in literature, namely fiction, poetry, drama, and non-fiction. Genres क्या हुए? कुछ नहीं, nothing very complicated. Simply a classification of works that are written in literature. Fiction में क्या आ जाता है? Novels आ जाती हैं, short stories आ जाती हैं, and they are, when we say fiction, it means something that is unreal. Okay, it is not about a reality of something or somebody. Then comes your poetry, poem. How poem can be differentiated from all these other 3 genres? That it has, every poem for that matter, has a rhythmic pattern. It has a meter, it is a verse. Verse क्या होता है? Song or a poem. Drama, of course, it is written to be acted on the stage, and it is also written to be read. Non-fiction में आपके essays आ जाते हैं, criticism आ जाते हैं, your articles, your newspaper articles we can say, but that is not what we call creative literature. हम यहाँ पे creative literature की बात कर रहे हैं, technical literature की नहीं. What falls into the category of technical literature are your newspapers, magazines and articles. This is what we are focusing on, is your creative literature. We are focusing on what? On what this literature is particularly. This is your creative literature. So this is a very important aspect that you must remember as far as literature is concerned, that there are 4 genres in literature. Now moving ahead, when I talk about English literature, who is known as the father of English literature and language? The great man, the great scholar, Geoffrey Chaucer. He is known as the father of English language as well as literature. Please mind it, okay? English language and English literature. और जब हम हिस्ट्री पढ़ते हैं किसकी? इंग्लिश लिटरेचर की, which was written in England, okay? इंग्लिश लिटरेचर की जब हम बात करते हैं तो it dates back to the 14th century, from where literature got a place for itself. Okay, it held some importance. And why? Because in this century came the great father of English literature, that is Geoffrey Chaucer. But what I'm writing wrong is the name of the 14th century, which was known as Age of Chaucer. Okay? Do not get disturbed as to what is going on. Just remember certain things that I'm telling you, especially over here. Remember the four yearners. Remember that Geoffrey Chaucer is the father of English language and literature. So the first age, when we begin the history of English literature, 14th century, Age of Chaucer, he wrote poems, such great poems that nobody has been able to match up to them. So this category, he wrote poetry. Then 15th century, next century came, it came to be known as the Barren Age of Literature. I'll be using little short forms because the board sometimes goes small. So, Barren Age of Literature. Barren समझते हैं आप लोग, जो चीज उपजाऊ नहीं होती हम उसे barren बोलते हैं. अब age कैसे barren हो सकती है, या literature कैसे barren हो सकता है? In the way that writers जो 15th century में आए, जिन्होंने poetry लिखा या drama लिखा, they simply copied the writers of 14th century. They could not write something original. They could not write masterpieces, let me say. Okay, that is why Barren Age of Literature. In the 16th century, then comes the 16th century, which was known as the Elizabethan Age, and this age is also known as Age of the great dramatist Shakespeare. After the age of Shakespeare came the 17th century, which was known as the classical age of literature. Why classical age? Because here the writers, whether they were writing novels, whether they were writing poetry or drama, these writers, they followed the classicists. Classicists हम किनको बोलते हैं? Classicists are the ancient Greek writers. Okay, ancient Greek writers, and the focus over here during the classical age was mainly on elegance, mainly on the king and the people who belonged to the royal stage, right? So focus was there. After that began the 18th century, which was the Romantic Age of Literature. Now, by romance, we do not mean the literal meaning of romance. Romantic का मतलब यहाँ पे है that whatever poetry was written during this time or novels that were written in this particular century, it focused on common man. Here I told you the focus of writers were on the royal class. Here common people were the part of novels and poetries, and nature, the nature outside, it had a very great significance as far as this age is concerned. That is why it was romance with the nature. It was romance with the pastoral life. Pastoral life किसको बोलते हैं? Village life को हम pastoral life बोलते हैं. Post romantic age was the Victorian age. जैसा कि नाम से you can guess, Queen Victoria ruled at this time, and various significant writers who wrote fiction, poetry, drama came in this particular age. Now, till here, certain standards, certain rules of writing fiction, poetry, drama, and criticism were followed by the writers. Here, when 20th century and the 21st century, in both these times, what eventually happened? First of all, let me tell you the names of them. 20th century is known as modernism and 21st century is postmodernism. So what happened, for you to remember, what you should know is that writers of this age, and even I must say artists, artists of this age, अगर हम literature और art दोनों की बात करें, they break away from rules. They broke away from the standards that had been set by writers who had come till this age. That is why it is known as modernism and this is postmodernism. These are basically taken as movements in literature when we talk of modernism and postmodernism. So for you being students of first year, it is very important that you understand this background as far as as far as English literature is concerned. तो हमने बात करी ऑनर्स की, हमने बात करी हिस्ट्री ऑफ इंग्लिश लिटरेचर की. इसके बाद हम बात करेंगे लिटरेचर्स की. लिटरेचर्स, whatever literature is written in America is American literature. Australia, Australian literature. Similarly, when I talk about my country, our country, Indian literature. And this particular literature, has several categorizations, but I will give you only few names. Say for example, there is folk literature in Indian literature. Then there is partition literature. पार्टीशन लिटरेचर के नाम से ही आप समझ सकते हैं, पार्टीशन लिटरेचर. And another one, the name which I have already mentioned to you is Dalit literature, which is also commonly known as now, popularly known as now, literature from the margins. Folk literature, generally what happened? नानी माँ हमें कहानियां सुनाती हैं. They tell us about the culture. That is how literature was passed on. तो वो कौन सा तरीका हो गया? That is what we call oral literature. That is what existed prior. It still exists. Okay. But whatever has come in the written format is we give the name as literature. So folk literature, folk stories of all our states. If we talk of our state also, various folk tales have been written by a great teacher, Ma'am Meenakshi Paul ma'am. She has written a lot of folk stories about folk stories of Himachal. Then partition literature, जैसे कि नाम से आपको पता चल रहा होगा, the literature that was written at the time of partition or after partition, or by the people who had faced the nightmare of partition. Their experiences, obviously they must have had bad experiences which they have written in the form of short stories or in the form of novel. And then the Dalit literature, which is known as literature from the margins. Now, Dalit literature क्या हुआ? What is Dalit literature? आपके first unit को title दिया गया है Dalit literature. So this is literature that is written by the Dalits, the people of the society who are considered to belong to the lower strata of the society. The literature that is written by them is known as Dalit literature, and now it is called by the name of literature from the margins. So it is not just that these people wrote about atrocities that they faced, but there are stories where people, these Dalit people, they also stood against the Brahmin caste or the upper strata of the society, and they tried to sort freedom for themselves. They tried to sort their identities as not a Dalit but as human beings, because the treatment that these peoples these people have suffered at the hands of Brahmins was no less than animals. And I must say slaves. अगर आपने story पढ़ी है Deliverance, तो you can understand to what level Dukhi was tortured by Pandit Ghasiram. What all he faced, eventually what happened. Okay, not getting into detail as we are just about to begin the story. So just a little idea. I hope you must have got it. Don't be too confused about anything. आपको याद रखने की चीज है Yoners. You should know about what Dalit literature is about, as आपके unit का title है. And this is just for your knowledge, you must say. Remember that Geoffrey Chaucer is the father of English literature and English language. So next, let us move on to the story. स्टोरी पढ़ी है आपने वर्ड मीनिंग्स भी मार्क किए हैं. आई वाज गेटिंग मैसेजेस, मैम डिक्शनरी से वर्ड मीनिंग्स भी देख लिए हैं, सब कुछ कर लिया है. सो द फर्स्ट थिंग, द टाइटल ऑफ द स्टोरी, डिलीवरेंस बाय मुंशी प्रेमचंद. अब ये ध्यान रखिएगा कि मैंने क्या किया है. आई हैव अंडरलाइंड the name of the story. स्टोरी शुरू करने से पहले थोड़ा बहुत मुंशी प्रेमचंद के बारे में. What do you know about him? If you have read, is it his real name? No, this is a pseudonym. मुंशी प्रेमचंद इनका असली नाम नहीं था. This was his pen name, जिसको हम pseudonym भी कहते हैं. His real name was धनपत राय श्रीवास्तव. And मुंशी प्रेमचंद, मुंशी जो इनको टाइटल दिया गया, that was out of honor for him, respect for him. He was a teacher by profession, and out of that honor, that Munshi was added to his pen name. Now, what मुंशी प्रेमचंद जी has done, obviously आप सबको पता चल गया होगा अब तक कि originally जो ये Deliverance है, मुंशी प्रेमचंद जी is one of the most popular writer of Indian literature. So Munshi Premchand, he is known as the emperor of Indian novelists. He has written more than 12 novels and around 100 odd short stories. जब हम इंग्लिश में odd बोलते हैं ना, 100 odd बोला मैंने, तो इसका मतलब है we are not sure that whether he has written 101 or 99. So odd simply means this. We are not confirmed. Similarly, हम शेक्सपियर के plays के लिए भी कहते हैं that he has written 39 odd plays, as we are not sure whether it is 38 or whether it is 40. So odd का मतलब ये होता है यहाँ पे. So around 100 odd short stories, right? Now this particular story was written in the Hindi title, that is Sadgati. Sadgati क्या होता है? That a person gets a good death and he frees himself from the transcendentalism of life. Transcendentalism of life, again taking birth, again dying, life circle, death circle that goes on. तो सदगति उसको मिलती है जो इस सर्कल से बाहर चला जाता है, who has had a good death and who will not take a rebirth again. Now deliverance over here, if you have checked the meaning, it says that the action of being rescued or set free. अब ये setting free from what? Where do you want to set free yourself from? From the transcendental life. That is taking birth, dying, again taking birth, again dying. So deliverance means setting free from this cycle. Now here you have the main character को हम इंग्लिश में protagonist बोलते हैं, and Dukhi is the protagonist of the story. पास जाता है, the Brahmin of their village and he requests him to set an auspicious date for the wedding of his daughter. For this little work क्या? What is the little work he has to do? कि एक तारीख select करनी है, एक date select करनी है, auspicious date select करनी है for the wedding of his daughter. So Pandit Ghasiram, doing this little work, he slaves this man like anything, and eventually what happens is what we have to find in the story. Did this poor man got a date for his daughter's wedding, or what he faced at the hands of the Brahmin Pandit Ghasiram? Dukhi the tanner. Tanner का मतलब देखा होगा आपने. Tanner हम किसको बोलते हैं? Dukhi the tanner was sweeping in the front of his door while Jhuria, his wife, plastered the floor with cow dung. When they both found a moment to rest for their work, Jhuria said, "Aren't you going to the Brahman to ask him to come? If you don't, he's likely to go off somewhere." So his wife says that, why don't you go to the Pandit Ghasiram's house and ask him to come here and to help us do some work. So, yes, I'm going, Dukhi said, but we have to think about what he is going to sit on. Now, you will have a guest, a Pandit, a Brahmin. Where will you make him sit? He is a tanner, a chamar, right? And in his house, where will he make that Brahmin sit? He's worried about that. Now comes in this thing, literature from the margins, the Dalit literature, what Munshi Premchand did. He brought forward, मैंने आपको क्या बताया? Literature is the mirror of society. जितनी stories Munshi Premchand ji ने लिखी, he brought forth the evil caste system that existed in our society at that time. Okay? And what atrocities these people had to face at the hands of the Brahmin caste has been depicted in most of his works. That is what he has done, and that is what he is doing in this story also. Okay, so he says, can't we find a cot somewhere? Cot is a bed. You could borrow one from the village headman's wife. Sometimes the things you say are really aggravating, really annoying. The people in headman's house give me a cot. He says, will they give me a cot? Why will the headman of the village, the pradhan of the village, give Dukhi a cot, a bed? They won't even let a coal out of their house to light your fire with. So are they going to give me a cot even when they are where I can go and talk to them? If I ask for a pot of water, I won't get it. He says, I know I will not get anything from them. Why do you expect to do something which is not gonna happen? So his temperament shows that he knows that I am a Dalit, I belong to a lower strata, and I have no right either to invite Panditji to my house or to go and request a bed to the headman, to the pradhan of the town, of the village, A cot isn't like the things we have got, cow, dung fuel or chaff or wood that anybody who wants pick up and carry off. You would better wash your own cot and set it out. So Dukhi suggests to Jhuria that let us take out our own bed, wash it off, clean it up and set it right. In this hot weather, it ought to be dry by the time he comes. He won't sit on our cot, Jhuria said. You know, what a stickler. He is about religion and doing things according to rule. A little worried, Dukhi said, yes, that's true. I'll break off some mohava leaves, big leaves of a tree, mohava plant, and make a mat for him. That will be the thing. So that will make up his bed, the cot where he can ask the Brahmin to sit. Great gentlemen eat of mohava leaves. They are holy. So that is why he's opted for mohava leaves. Why? Because they are holy. Hand me my stick and I'll break off some. I'll make the mat, you go to him. But we will have to offer him some food. He can take food and cook, won't we? I'll put it in my dish. Don't commit any sacrilege. So, he says that how will or why will a Brahmin come to our house, sit on our cot and eat the food offered by us? And if we are doing that, we are committing a sin, and that sin is called sacrilege. Sacrilege because you are doing something against the religion. And it was not the religion, it was the caste standards that were set at that time. It was not just the religion. It was objectionable to Pandit Ghasiram because for them it was religion. Dukhi said, if you do, the offering will be wasted and the dish broken. Baba will just pick up the dish and dump it, throw it. He flies off the handle very fast, and when he is enraged, that is, he's angry, he doesn't even spare his life. And he beat his son so badly that even now he goes around with a broken hand. So we will put the offering on a leaf too. So that also we can't offer a plate. We will have to put the food also on the leaf. Mohava leaf pe unko बिठाएंगे because mohava leaf holy hota hai, and we will offer food to him also on the leaves, and we will not touch it. Imagine how they will put the food on the plate, on the leaves without touching it. So, आप जब इसको पढ़ रहे हैं, एक चीज आप देखिए कि what has these people, झुरिया की बात करें, दुखी की बात करें, they have been taught since their childhood. इनकी कंडीशनिंग ऐसी की गई है कि आप दलित हो, आप अपर क्लास सोसाइटी से, आप ब्राह्मण सोसाइटी से, you just cannot touch them, you just cannot cross their road, you just cannot come on their way, you cannot invite them to your house. There are so many things that you have to follow, and if you broke those rules, then what you are doing? You are committing sacrilege. So they too even know. They are not raising a voice against it, that we are humans. God has made us all equal. But what they think? That we are downtrodden. We are Dalits. We belong to the lower caste, and we need to respect and follow whatever the upper class or the Brahmins say. Just don't touch it. Take Juri, the Gaun's daughter, to the village merchant and bring back all the things we need. Let it be a complete offering. So what are the offerings, for the Brahmin, Pandit Ghasiram? A full 2 pounds of flour, atta, a half of rice, a quarter of gram, black chana, and 1/8 of ghee, salt, turmeric, and 4 annas at the edge of the leaf. If you don't find the Gaun girl, then get the woman who runs the parching oven. Beg her to go if you have to. Just don't touch anything, because that will be a great wrong. So how can she manage? How can she put the things on the platter without touching them? But then he knows that I'm not supposed to commit sacrilege. After giving these instructions, he moves out and he reaches Ghasiram's house. Now, the writer, Munshi Premchand ji, has introduced Ghasiram. I will read that. I'm skipping some lines. Pandit Ghasiram was completely devoted to God. As soon as he awoke, he would busy himself with his rituals. After washing his hands and feet at 8 o'clock, he would begin the real ceremony of worship. The first part of which consisted of the preparation of bhang. After that, he would grind sandalwood paste for half an hour. Then with a straw, he would apply it to his forehead before the mirror. Between 2 lines of sandalwood paste, he would draw a red dot. Then on his chest and arms, he would draw designs of perfect circle. And this he would take out after this he would take out the image of Lord, bathe it, apply sandalwood to it, deck it with flowers. The sandalwood chandan jisko hum bolte hain na, or Panditjis use it on their forehead. Perform the ceremony of lighting the lamp before it and ringing a little bell. At 10 o'clock, he would rise from his devotions and after a drink of bhang go outside, where a few clients would have gathered. Such was the reward for his piety, his holiness. This was his crop to harvest. This is how he was making his earnings, I should say. This is how he was making his earnings. Today when he came from the shrine in his house, he saw Dukhi, the untouchable tanner, sitting there with a bundle of grass. Now see, when he has come to visit him, then also he was supposed to offer him something, so he gets a bundle of grass. As soon as he caught sight of him, Dukhi stood up, prostrated himself. Prostrated, danvat pranam jisko hum bolte hain, pura zameen pe let ke. On the ground, stood up and folded his hands. Seeing the Pandit's glorious figure, his heart was filled with reverence, respect for the Pandit. How godly a sight! A rather short, roly-poly fellow with a bald, shiny skull, bald, ganja, chubby cheeks and eyes aglow with Brahmanical energy. This is Dukhi's version of the physical appearance of Pandit Ghasiram. And whatever has been discussed, whatever I read in the previous paragraph is the routine of Pandit Ghasiram. So these are certain things that you keep noting, that what is there in this thing, in this particular paragraph. There can maybe a question that write a note on how Pandit Ghasiram made his earning, or what was his daily routine. So this is how we will proceed. You should know what is being discussed where, and I'm telling you also. So the godly feature, the godly appearance is what Dukhi tells us over here. Then the sandalwood markings bestowed on him the aspect of God. At the sight of Dukhi, he intoned. He asked him, "What brings you here today, little Dukhi?" Bowing his head, Dukhi said, "I am arranging Bitiya's betrothal. That is, I am planning her wedding. उसकी शादी करने का सोच रहा हूँ मैं. Will your worship," he's requesting him, "will your worship help us to fix an auspicious date? When can you find time?" "I have no time today," Pandit said, "but still I'll manage to come toward evening." "No, Maharaj, please come soon. I have arranged everything for you. Where shall I set this grass down?" He brought that offering, that bundle of grass. He asked, where should I put it? "Put it down in front of the cow. And if you will just pick up the broom, sweep it clean in front of the door," Panditji said. So he says, "Today I can't come. Right now I can't come with you. I will see in the evening." But he says that, "Please, I do not have time. You please come with me. And where should I put the grass?" He said, "Offer it to the cow and clean that part. Clean the house. In the front of the door," he says. Clean in the front of the door. "Then the floor of the sitting room hasn't been plastered." अब आप देखिएगा, बजाय उसके साथ जाने के, उसकी हेल्प करने के, या जो वो चाहता है, what he wants, he just wants that Pandit should fix a date for his daughter's wedding. He will make him work like hell. So first thing what he says, clean the door, broom in front of the door, broom and sweep, झाड़ू भी मारो, पोछा भी मारो door के पास. And then what you have to do, you have to plaster the sitting room. Plaster, cow dung से plaster करना है. Old houses, when plastering was done with the cow dung. "While you are doing that, I will be having my lunch. Then I will rest a bit, and after that I will come." So the list has been prepared for works which Dukhi has to do. Oh yes, you can split that wood too. So the fourth work that was assigned was splitting the wood. A huge log of wood was there, and he said कि उसको split करना है, तुमने उसको तोड़ना है. And in the storeroom, there is a little pile of hay. Just take it out and put it into the fodder bin. Fodder, the food that is eaten by the cattle over there. Dukhi began at once to carry out the orders. He swept the door step, he plastered the floor. This took until noon. 12 बज गए ये करते करते. Pandit ji went off to have his lunch. Dukhi who had eaten nothing since morning, was terribly hungry. But there was no way he could eat hair in the house of Pandit ji. His house was a mile away. If he went to eat there, Pandit ji would be angry. The poor fellow suppressed his hunger and began to split the wood, break the wood. It was fairly thick tree trunk, बहुत मोटा tree का log था वो, okay? It was fairly thick, and it was fairly thick tree trunk on which a great many devotees had previously tried their strength. तो जितने भी devotees पंडित घासीराम जी के पास आए, सबने उस tree trunk को break करने की कोशिश करी, but almost all of them failed. And it was ready to match iron with iron in any fight. It was so strong, it was so thick. Dukhi, who was used to cutting grass and bringing it to the market, had no experience with cutting wood. Dukhi को wood काटना ही नहीं आता था, logs काटने ही नहीं आते थे. The grass would bow its head before his sickle. Sickle पता है सबको? तराटी जिसको हम बोलते हैं. But now even when he brought the axe, kulhari, down with all its strength, it did not make a mark on the trunk. जब उसने कुल्हाड़ी उठा के पूरे फोर्स के साथ लॉक के ऊपर हिट किया, उसके ऊपर एक निशान तक नहीं पड़ा लॉक के ऊपर, इतना थिक था वो लॉक. The axe just glanced off, it just fell down. He was drenched in sweat, he was full of sweat, panting, breathless. He sat down exhausted and got up again. Now he had not even eaten, just see to this thing. And he was even malnutrition, not getting proper food, not having a very, very weak body. He could scarcely lift his hands. His legs were unsteady. He saw spots. He felt dizzy. Chakkar aa raha tha usko. But he still went on trying. Just see the plight, just for small little work, how this man is being tortured, how he's slaved down to death. He thought if he could get a pipe full of tobacco to smoke, then perhaps he might feel refreshed. This was a Brahmin village and nobody would give him a hookah to smoke. And Brahmins don't smoke tobacco at all, like the low caste and untouchables. Suddenly he remembered that there was a Gond living in the village too. Again, Gonds are the lower strata people, untouchables. Surely he would have a pipe full. He would have the hookah and he can get some energy by pulling it up. He set off at a run for the man's house at once, and he was in luck. The Gond gave him both pipe and tobacco, and he had no fire to light up with. Now the problem was, he gave him the pipe, he gave him the cigar, but he could not light it up. He was not having fire. See the plight of the untouchables. Dukhi said, "Don't worry about fire, brother. I will go to Panditji's house and ask him for a light. They are still cooking there. So fire," he says, "I will take from Panditji's house." With this, he took the pipe and came back and stood on the veranda of Brahman's house. And he said, "Master, if I could get just a little of light, I'll smoke this pipe full." Panditji was eating, and his wife said, "Who's that man asking for a light?" "It is only that damned little Dukhi the tanner. I told him to cut some wood. The fire's lit, so give him some light." He says, "Humne aag already jalai hai, khana pak raha hai, let us give him some light." Now what the Panditayan says. Frowning, she said, "You have become so wrapped up in your books and astrological charts that you have forgotten all about caste rules. If there's tanner or a washerman or a bird catcher, why he can just come walking right into the house as though he owned it? How can he come without taking a permission? You would think it as an inn, dharamshala hai ye koi, and not a decent Hindu's house. It is a respectful Brahmin's house. It is not a dharamshala, a inn. tell that good for nothing. She uses this word good for nothing for Dukhi to get out, or I'll scorch his face with a fire pan. She'll throw fire on him. She says, just go out. Trying to calm her down, Panditji said, he's come inside. So what? Nothing that belongs to you has been stolen. Chori karne nahi aaya. He's not stolen anything. The floor is clean. It has not been desegregated. It has not been spoiled by him. It has not become unholy by his coming. Why not just let him have his light? He's doing our work, isn't he? हमारा काम कर रहा है तो थोड़ी सी लाइट हम उसको दे सकते हैं. Fire. You would have to pay at least 4 annas if you hired some laborer to split it. So he says, अगर मैं labor hire करता तो मुझे उसको 4 annas pay करने पड़ते, and now I am getting my work done free of cost. Losing her temper, the Panditine said, what does he mean coming into the house? It was the son of a bitch's bad luck. What else? The Pandit said. It is all right, she said. This time I will give him his fire, but if he overcomes into the house again like that, I will give him the coals on the faces. So she says, it's okay, he has come this time, but next time if he comes to my house, I will throw fire on his face. Fragments of this conversation reached Dukhi's ears. He overheard. उसने सुन लिया, but repented. उसे अफसोस हुआ. उसने सोचा, why I am expecting such a thing from these people. It was a mistake to come. मेरी गलती थी कि मैं fire request, light request करने इनके पास आया. She was speaking the truth. How could a tanner ever come into a Brahman's house? These people were clean and holy. अब देखिए वो क्या imbibed है उसके दिमाग में, क्या conditioning है उसकी since beginning. You are an untouchable. If you visit the house of the Pandit, you will make his house unclean. You will make his house unholy. That was why the whole world worshipped and respected them. A mere tanner was absolutely nothing. He had lived all his life in the village without understanding this before. Therefore, when the Pandit's wife came out bringing coals, it was like a miracle from heaven. He was wondering how come, she has come with coal in her hand so that I can light up my cigar. Folding his hands and touching his forehead to the ground, he said, Panditine, mother, it was very wrong of me to come inside your house. Tanners don't have much sense. If we weren't fools, why would we get kicked so much? यहाँ the had brought लिखा है, typing error है, it should be she. She had brought the coals in pair of tongs, चिमटा. From a few feet away, थोड़ा दूर उससे कुछ कदम दूर खड़े होके, she splashes the coal on him and it comes on his bed. So what happens? From a few feet away with her veil, घूंघट, पर्दा system होता था पहले. So she was having that veil drawn on her face. She flung the coal towards Dukhi. Big sparks fell on his head and drawing back hastily, he took them out of his hair. तो वो कोल के जो टुकड़े गरम जलते हुए कोयले के टुकड़े जो थे वो उसके सिर पे जा गिरे बालों में. To himself he said, this is what comes of dirtying a clean Brahman's house. Now see, he is blaming himself कि उसने ब्लंडर किया पंडित जी के घर में आके, तो उसको ये सफरिंग झेलना ही पड़ेगा. He has to face this because he has done a blunder, a sin. How quickly God pays you back for it. That is why everybody's afraid of Pandits. Everybody else gives up his money and never gets it back. But whoever got any money out of a Brahmin? So nobody is helped by the Brahmins. Anybody who tried would have his whole family destroyed and his legs would turn leprous. They would get leprosy. That is, they would become meek, fumble, and have anybody who tried would have his whole family destroyed, and his legs would turn leprous. That is, the person's family would be completely destroyed, and the person would become a leprous. He would get leprosy. he would get disabled. He went outside and smoked his pipe, then took up axe and started to work again. Because the sparks had fallen on him, the Pandit's wife felt some pity for him. So Panditain को थोड़ी सी दया आ गई उस पे, and what she does is she goes inside and says to her husband, इसको कुछ खाने को दे देना चाहिए. Now the Pandit's reaction is very weird. He says, हमारे पास बचे हुए टुकड़े हैं खाने के, we have little food, but nothing will. This little beer, he should what they say. Let us read. There are a couple of pieces left over. What is the good of 2 or 3 pieces for a tanner? Bread के कुछ pieces से क्या होगा? 3-4 रोटियों से उसका क्या होगा? He needs at least a good 2 pounds. His wife put her hands over her ears as if, how much can he eat? He said, if there is some bran, choker, जिसको हम बोलते हैं, and husk, mix them in a flour and make a couple of pancakes. So pancakes बनाने को बोलता है, and she says that I cannot cook in such weather. Now this fellow, he has not eaten anything. He is tired of whatever work he has been doing, and what he does is, I'm leaving a few paragraphs, and I'm coming to the last paragraph on page number 9. Dukhi began to think, where did the Baba get hold of this trunk that can't be split? There's not even a crack in it so far. How long can I keep smashing into it? I have got 100 things to do at home by now. In a house like mine, there is no need to work. Something always left over. But he doesn't worry about that. I will just bring him his hay and tell him, Baba, the wood did not split. I will come and finish it tomorrow. So he says, I'm not able to do it today. I will come tomorrow and I will finish it. He lifted up the basket and began to bring the hay from the storeroom to the fodder bin. So this was the last task he had to perform. After sweeping and brooming the floor, plastering the house, cutting the log. Log उससे नहीं कटा, तो उसने वो काम अभी छोड़ दिया, and he started doing the fodder work, giving the food to the various cattle, to the cows over there. And Pandit Ghasiram, he saw Dukhi asleep with the basket still on his head. He shouted, "Are Dukhiya sleeping? The wood's lying there just the way it was. ये wood का log तो ऐसे ही पड़ा है तब से. What's taken you so long? इतना time कैसे लग गया? You have used up the whole day just to bring in a little fistful of hay and then gone and fallen asleep. एक hay cattles को डालने में तुम थक गए? What have you done? और तुम सो भी गए? Pick up the axe and split the wood." Dukhi picked up the axe again. He completely forgot about what he had been thinking about before. क्या सोच रहा था वो? कि उनको बोलेगा कि मैं आज जाता हूँ, मैं कल आके split कर दूंगा. Today I am not in a position to do it. His stomach was pasted against his backbone. He was feeling malnutrition. He was feeling utterly hungry. He had not so much as eaten breakfast that morning. There wasn't any time. कुछ खाया नहीं था उसने, टाइम नहीं था, बिकॉज उसको जल्दी जाके पंडित जी को साथ लाना था और डेट फिक्स करनी थी. बट सी व्हाट ही इज फेसिंग. जस्ट टू स्टैंड अप सीम्ड एन इम्पॉसिबल टास्क. अब उसके लिए खड़ा होना भी एक इम्पॉसिबल टास्क हो गया था. ही वॉज फीलिंग सो वीक. His spirit flagged, but only for a moment. This was Pandit. If he didn't fix an auspicious day, the marriage would be a total failure. So what he thinks, that if I'm not able to, hold myself, though I am feeling very weak, then everything will be spoiled for my daughter's marriage. Everything will turn out to be a total failure. And he could not ruin anybody he wanted to. Panditji came close to the log and standing there began to goad him, force him. That's right, give it a real hard stroke. फिर वो बिल्कुल उसके साथ खड़े होके, दुखी के साथ उसको, he's telling him कि give a hard stroke, जोर से मारो इसको. A real hard one, come on now, really hit it now. Don't you have the strength in your arm? जान नहीं है तुम्हारी बाजुओं में? Don't you have strength? Smash it. What's the point of standing these, thinking about it. That's it. It's going to split. There's a crack in it. He says, yes, there is a crack in it. Dukhi was in a delirium, some kind of hidden power. Delirium, he was in confusion, he was hungry, he was weak, he was feeble. Hidden power seemed to have come into his hands. It was as though fatigue, hunger, weakness, all had left him. Suddenly he got some power. ताकत आ गई एकदम से उसको suddenly. He was astonished at his strength, surprised. The axe strokes descended one after another like lightning. बिजली की तरह वो जो strokes लग रहे थे wood log पे, they were coming again and again. He went on driving the axe in a state of intoxication, as if he has taken, he's been intoxicated. He's been under some, as if he is under some influence of some drugs, and he has got so much of power, until finally the log split down the middle, और वो बीच में से ultimately the log broke. And Dukhi's hands let the axe drop. उसके हाथ से कुल्हाड़ी छूट गई. At the same moment, overcome with dizziness, tiredness, chakkar, he fell. The hungry, thirsty, exhausted body gave up. So we stop here and we'll continue further. Let us continue with the story. We were discussing Deliverance by Munshi Premchand. Now we stopped at the point in the story where Dukhi has been totally exhausted. His body has totally given up. He had come to Pandit Ghasiram for one little thing. And what was that? That was to set an auspicious date for his daughter's wedding. Okay, he had come for this. And rather than helping him out, rather than coming with him, along with him to his house, Pandit Ghasiram ji, he tried to make him work like a slave. What did he give him? He gave him a thick log of wood, right, which he could hardly break. And there have been people who have been trying to, break this log, but they failed to do so. And what is the worst part is that why Pandit Ghasiram ji want Dukhi to break this log, so that he is not supposed to pay the laborers 4 annas. To save those 4 annas, he is wanting Dukhi to cut this thick log of wood free of cost. Okay, so let us continue further the story. Page number 11. Panditji called, "Get up, just 2 or 3 more strokes. I want it in small bits." So totally exhausted, even the axe had fallen from his hand, right? But still, what Panditji is saying him, that get up, go, give 2-3 more strokes, so that the log of wood is broken into small pieces, small bits. Dukhi did not get up. It didn't seem proper to Pandit Ghasiram to insist now. So Pandit Ghasiram could guess something fishy. He could guess that something wrong has happened. He went inside, drank some bhang, emptied his bowls, bathed, and came forth attired in full Pandit regalia, that is, in the dress of Pandit. Dukhi was still lying on the ground. Panditji shouted, "Well, Dukhi, are you going to stay lying here? Let's go. I am on my way to your house." So why he got dressed up, attired? He wore his attires, the attires of the dress of the Pandit. And now he was ready. After almost slaving him, torturing him, making him so exhausted, now he gets himself ready. He gets dressed up. Everything is settled. But still, Dukhi did not get up. Now something was really wrong. A little alarmed, Panditji drew close and saw that Dukhi was absolutely stiff. He was not moving. Startled, half out of his wits, he ran into the house and said to his wife, "Little Dukhi looks as though he is dead." So he's startled, he's surprised, he's totally in doubt that what has happened, and he comes and tells his wife, the Panditine, that Dukhi appears to be dead. Thrown into confusion, Panditine said, "But hasn't he just been chopping wood? He died right while he was splitting it." He died while breaking this thick log of wood. "What's going to happen?" "Calmer," she says. "Cool down, just relax," the Panditine said. "What do you mean, what's going to happen?" "Send word to the tanner's settlement so that they can come and take the corpse away." Corpse is the dead body. In a moment, the whole village knew about it. It happened that except for a gaunt house, everyone who lived there was a Brahmin. So when we had started reading the story, we know that where Pandit Ghasiram lived, there was only one gaunt family, and that gaunt family man was one who provided the pipe and the so that Gond was that man who provided Dukhi with the pipe and the tobacco. Why he wanted the tobacco? So that he could gain some energy and start doing the difficult task that was assigned to him. People stayed off the road that went there. The only path to the well passed that way. How were they to get water? Who would come to draw water with a tanner's corpse nearby? If the dead body of an untouchable will be near the well, how can the Brahmins go to the well to fetch water? This was the situation that had arisen. One old woman said to Panditji, "Why don't you have this body thrown away?" See the attitude of these Brahmins, the upper strata of the society, towards the untouchable, as if their body was just a thing, just throw away, she said. "Is anybody in the village going to be able to drink water or not? And if he's thrown near the well, nobody will be able to drink the water from the well." The Gond went from the village to the tanner's settlement where the tanners lived, and told everyone the story. "Careful now," he said. "Don't go to the body. There will be a police investigation yet. It's not a joke that somebody killed this poor fellow. The somebody may be a pandit, but just in his own house. If you move the body, you will get arrested too." Now you see the irony. I will explain you irony once I finish the story. But here, what is the irony? That Dukhi's own people, that is the tanners, they don't want to accept or take the dead body of Dukhi. Why? Because the police will question them. And out of this concept of untouchability, out of this concept of sacrilege being committed, none of the Pandits, the Brahmins, will touch the dead body of this untouchable. So this is the irony. Nobody wants to just touch his body, nor his people, nor the Brahmins. Right after this, Panditji arrived, but there was nobody in the settlement ready to carry the corpse away. To be sure, Dukhi's wife and daughter both went mourning, that is crying, mourning to Panditji's door and tore their hair and wept. About a dozen other women went with them, but there was no man with them to bear up the body. So his family, his wife, his daughter, and some other ladies, they did turn up to Panditji's door for the body, but there was no man with them. Panditji threatened the tanners. He tried to wheedle them, but they were very mindful of the police, and not one of them stirred. Not one of them listened or tried to follow what Panditji was saying, because he was trying to keep himself safe. Finally, Panditji went home disappointed. At midnight, the weeping and lamentation were still going on. It was hard for the Brahmins to fall asleep, but no tanner came to get the corpse. And how could a Brahmin lift up an untouchable's body? So this is the ironic situation that has risen up here. It was extremely forbidden in the scriptures and no one could deny it. So now they are taking support of the scriptures that they were not in any case they can touch his body. So, till now what we have seen, when this man Dukhi, the untouchable, he was alive, what all problems he faced, and it was actually for a auspicious day that he had visited Panditji. But ultimately what happened? Angrily, the Panditine said, "Those witches are driving me out of my mind, and they are not even Hoes yet." So she's calling whom? The witches, the tanner ladies who are crying, the tanner women who are crying, and she's calling them witches, and she's saying their throat has not even become rough. By Hoes, we mean rough. Let the hags cry as long as they want. When he was alive, nobody cared a straw about him. Now that he is dead, everybody in the village is making a fuss about him. So this is what the thought process, the thinking, the ideology of the Panditine is. The wailing, that is crying, of tanners is bad luck, the Panditine said. See how orthodox. Yes, very bad luck, and it is beginning to stink already. So what is beginning to stink? The body, the dead body, the corpse of Dukhi is already started stinking, smelling. Wasn't that bastard a tanner? It was an untouchable. Those people eat anything, clean or not, without worrying about it. No sort of food disgusts them. They are all polluted. When she is saying polluted, by polluted, she simply means to say that they are untouchables, right? Somehow or other, they got through the night, but even in the morning, no tanner came. They could still hear the wailing of the women. The stench, that is the smell, was beginning to spread quite a bit. Panditji got a rope. Now Panditji has finally got some idea, and finally he gets a rope. He made a noose and managed to get it over the dead man's feet and drew it tight. Noose? By rope what he means, he got a rassa, जिसको हम हिंदी में बोलते हैं, and noose is a tight knot. एक गांठ उन्होंने उसमें लगाई, and he tied it to what? He tied it to Dukhi's feet and drew it tight. Morning mist still clouded the air. Panditji grabbed the rope and began to drag it, and he dragged it until it was out of the village. Now what is it over here? The corpse of Dukhi. When he got back home, he bathed immediately, read out prayers to Durga for purification, and sprinkled Ganga's water around the house. Out there in the field, the jackals and kites, dogs and crows were picking at Dukhi's body. This was the reward of a whole life of devotion, service and faith. So this is the deliverance. This is the good death which eventually दुखी receives और दुखी attains. Now अब last part आप लोगों को समझ आया क्या किया पंडित जी ने? He just tied a noose, रस्से से उसको बांधा उसकी एक टांग में, and he pulled him out of his house when it was neither morning, neither it was not completely morning at that time, and he dragged him out of the village of the Brahmins and left him for the animals to eat his dead body. And when he comes back home, how he purifies himself? अपने ऊपर holy water of the Ganga river, he sprinkled that on himself and he purified himself. Now the question arises, as I said you, was it really a good death? Deliverance stands for good death, but the title is ironic. Now what is ironic? कहाँ से बना? Ironic बना आईनी से. Aini is a literary device, where you are trying to tell something about a situation in a negative way. एक sentence लेते हैं हम, for example, how sweet the pill. Pill क्या होती है? जो दवाई होती है, गोली होती है. Okay? How sweet the pill tastes. Not a question mark, but a exclamatory mark. So don't you think this is altogether contrary to itself? Pills are always sour. They cannot be sweet. So this is what irony means. अब deliverance या दुखी की स्टोरी कैसे आयनिक है? सबसे पहले तो हम दुखी के नाम की बात करते हैं. He was given this name by his parents. Why? ताकि वो मिसफॉर्चून से बचा रहे. ऑलरेडी उसको ये नाम दे दिया गया. बट इवेंचुअली व्हाट हैपेंड? व्हाट हैपेंड टू हिम? द ऑपोजिट थिंग हैपेंड. He had to face the misfortunes all the time, all through his life, and even towards the end of his life. End of his life. What eventually happened? He was slaved to death by Pandit Ghasiram Ji. Okay, so this is how the title becomes ironic, and the name of the protagonist जब मैंने स्टोरी स्टार्ट करी थी आपको बताया था, protagonist is the main character of any story, any novel. Okay, so this is how his name is ironic. So in this way, Munshi Premchand has been successful. How he has been successful? He has been successful in criticizing the Hindu society, which is marked by caste distinctions. I would say caste as well as caste distinctions, and the prejudiced जो हम भेदभाव करते हैं, prejudiced norms. So this is what Munshi Premchand attacks through the story Deliverance. और हिंदी में जो ये लिखी गई है, the name I told you, it is सदगति. अब मैंने जब स्टोरी एक्सप्लेन करनी स्टार्ट करी, मैंने एक वर्ड मेंशन किया था, which is transcends. सबसे पहले एक बात आप समझेंगे कि डिलीवरेंस का मतलब होता है गुड डेथ. एंड व्हाट गुड डेथ मीन्स? दैट द पर्सन ट्रांसेंड्स हिज ह्यूमन सेल्फ एंड ही डज नॉट टेक्स अ rebirth. That is what I meant by the word transcends. He frees himself from the shackles of life and death. So this is how Deliverance is an absolute ironic title given by Munshi Premchand to attack all this. So in this way, I have touched upon the various aspects that relates to the story, and I am hopeful that you have understood the story well. So keep in mind the points that have been discussed. Still you have any queries, that will be taken up soon.